and welcome to this week's episode of the PolitiBabble podcast, where this week we're looking into whether democracy has failed the developing world. I'm Archibald Elliott, and as usual, I'm joined by my superb co-host,
Oliver Sykes.
Yeah, so it took us a while to get set up today because the Google Docs decided to censor this podcast and not actually let us, well, at least not let me onto the documents. So, yeah, this week we're continuing with our theme, our ardent theme of democracy, and questioning whether democracy has failed the developing world. As you've noticed, this week we don't have any fortune cookies.
As the Chinese New Year has now passed.
Yes, it's yesterday.
Yes.
No, not yesterday. It was 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
It was Tuesday, yes.
This week has been a bit of a blur. But,
Indeed it has.
Yeah. I mean, as usual, fast-moving current affairs, which we will obviously come into in our current affairs section. But, Archie, how's your week been?
Been long. I've been doing Oliver Cromwell coursework.
Lovely.
About Cromwell's foreign policy and his religious influences, or rather lack of religious influences, as I argue. Well, how's your week been? It's probably been slightly more interesting.
Yes, slightly more interesting. Well, no, I say slightly more interesting. I haven't really done an awful lot. Yes, no, I can't really think of much I've done. It's just been a standard school week, to be honest. But what I'm glad of is that the nights. No, I'm going to say the nights are getting longer in a way, and the mornings are lighter. The mornings are lighter. I need to stop going off on a tangent and making things longer than they need to be. But yes, I've been liking the early mornings with a bit of a sunrise a few minutes earlier, which just makes the difference.
I can imagine. Well, anyway, yes, we go on to this week about democracy and whether democracy has failed the developing world. Do you think the term developing world is an out-of-date one, or do you think it's still a good one to use?
I think it's okay to use, I think. I think there's parts of the world that are still in a developing sort of situation. I mean, we're always wanting to develop, but there are some countries that are a lot worse off than us, and has sort of democracy affected this? Well, I'm sure we're going to delve into that a bit further in the podcast, but to give my initial point of view, I do believe so. I feel that there's lots of different circumstances that lead to it, but it's usually all comes down to the change in power and economic sort of landslides and sort of the social class of a country, because the country is very deprived. Usually it's the leaders who it's usually the most wealthy people that seem to take over, and when that happens, there becomes a big divide between the most richest people in the country and the poorest, and you lack the sort of middle band. And that is sort of where your democracy kind of collapses in a way. I'm giving a weird analogy. I don't even know if I'm making any sense. But,
in the Western world, isn't that the case? We see America, for example. We see that very big disparity between those who, again, those just on the breadline who are still middle class, who is class and middle class, and the gap grows. Is that something necessarily mutually exclusive to a developing country?
Well, not necessarily. But there tends to be, compared to sort of the West, the power and dominance that the people have in the sort of Eastern hemisphere of the world is a lot more controlling. It's more sort of authoritarian in its way, rather than sort of you're looking at the West, where control's a lot more libertarian in its ways. But I see where you're coming from there. I do see that there is sort of that similar disparity. But yes, we do have a desk from our listener, which might as well read out now because there's only one of them.
Wait for it.
And it's from a regular contributor to the show, which we are very grateful for. As to any of our listeners, if you are listening right now, please do pop us a message, because we always love to hear from our listeners on their views and or if they want to come on the show. We usually leave that till the end, but if you're here now, you might not be here at the end. So we'll just I'll just say. So Sam,
Oliver, they're gone 5 minutes 20. 5 minutes 20 seconds ago.
Oh.
They've already gone.
They didn't even click on the show anyway. Democracy has done its good to the still developing nations, but it has been easily exploited. Well, it's sort of contradicts itself, that statement.
Because really, if it's exploited, then it didn't exist necessarily. It depends which way you view it, what perspective you take. What do you take from that?
Well, I'm sort of the belief that it has that there is not very much democracy. He's sort of saying that there is, but it's still, it's being exploited. I think it's being exploited all the time. In a sense, I don't think that there is. I think, there is basically not very much democracy in these developing countries. What's your stance on it, Archie?
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say, I think we'll come on to this now, I wouldn't say that democracy was the founding block of many of our states today. We see the likes of Europe were founded on autocratic monarchies, for example. We see that even the US, it wasn't really necessarily so, well, it held itself as a democracy. Where did the roots come from? It came from British colonialism, which, yes, some argue it's a democracy, some argue it's not, but it depends how we class a democracy. It was still ruled by those who had money, which I think, in that way of life, it worked. But the system wasn't really what we call truly democratic. Not everyone had the same amount of power. Women, for example, still at that point couldn't vote. And where did Britain, the foundations come on? It came from absolute monarchy, almost. And then again, it devolved and it became more what we class civilised by becoming democratic to a degree. But I still think we have people now questioning whether Britain really is democratic or whether it's just run on nepotism. I'd like to think it is a liberal democracy, but there's many countries around the world which we just historically have not formed from democracy, the current nations, yet we expect the nations which maybe aren't at the same economic development stage as us to already develop with democracy, and I find that quite a contradiction in itself.
Well, some may say that, without the political stability, democracy, without democracy, the political stability won't take place.
But democracy, surely, a weak democracy drives instability. We see it in the moment, let's say, in Northern Ireland. We can look at Germany, for another example. They have a democracy, in Germany especially, they're very split. They have to form lots of coalitions.
Yeah.
And it's taken ages and many elections to actually, Merkel said she'd go ages ago. And she was stuck in power for a long time.
Yeah.
Waiting for the parties to sort out the coalitions between them.
Which is just ridiculous, isn't it?
I wouldn't say it's political stability. No. It's instability. No policy really gets done. We just see, as the Brexit term goes, dither and delay.
Yeah, which we don't like dithering and delay. We like getting the job done. Not that I am anything to do with the Conservative Party. But no, I agree. I think the UK's position's a lot better. I mean, certainly the Isle of Man, we are in a great sort of situation with how we work, although it is interesting. Would you want to see the Manx system implemented in developing countries like Iraq, Afghanistan? I can keep on going. Rwanda, African nation. Would you want the Manx democracy system to be installed? Well, that could mean anyone that gets a mandate would be in power. And...
Is it really just anyone who gets the support from the old people gets in?
Well, I'll leave that where it is, Archie. You can make your own judgment there.
The census statistics do show that the larger population is in the elderly.
It is,
or people that are above 50. So it is the voter base to aim for as well. So,
it is. No, it's... yes, I think you have no luck, really. Imagine standing, and especially in an area which is probably a lot more concentrated, which tends to be, well, I mean, Douglas, if you were you've probably got more chance if you're a younger candidate to stand. I mean, if you're going into the sort of more rural areas, although you go, well, why are old people living in the rural areas? But no, in terms of what I'm saying is sort of for democracy, for the processes which take forever to get these candidates, like you've seen in Germany and like you're currently seeing in Northern Ireland with the DUP. Yes, it's frustrating, is what it is. Whereas on the Isle of Man, we've got a system which is, it flows, it works well to some degree. But yes, without the stability, without democracy, I think everything sort of tumbles in a way. And that's why getting people engaged in the political process is essential. And it does frustrate me when people go, oh, politics, doesn't bother me. I mean, you don't need to be, engrossed in it, but you do need to have some sort of, I mean, most people do have some sort of understanding, some sort of care, some sort of keep their eye on it. But some people don't.
Does that make it messy? Because we see, again, in certain countries, people prefer to leave if they trust their leader. They like the leader to make the decisions, to make the hard choices for the country. And sometimes that does genuinely work slightly better. I think even if we look at the example of South Korea or Taiwan, which in the 70s, 80s, they weren't democratic at all, but they saw a large economic rapid development because they weren't really impeded by people arguing over, should we really allow this certain thing to be said, should we allow this certain things to be said, should we put in this economic policy, should we put in this economic policy, because there's anything really, there's a multitude of policy decisions one can make or one can debate on all day. But they were then able to have a combination between an authoritarian government and a market economy. Not saying I would necessarily want to see in a country.
Yeah.
But it did work there. Democracy doesn't really turn poor countries into rich countries. It just exists mainly in rich countries because they've been able to then implement this democratic system because they have the infrastructure in place and the traditions in place and the protocol in place and all of that, which then, again, doesn't make it democratic. What really classes as democracy, Arthur, would you say?
Well, a democracy, in my opinion, which I've just been currently writing an essay on how whether or not I've forgotten the words, pressure groups or interest groups, do they improve or do they not improve democracy? We've covered pressure groups recently on the podcast, so if you want to go a few, probably in the last series we covered pressure groups. I mean, for what I do for my subject's a bit different. We sort of looking in US politics, and you're looking at a lot more different, more in depth kind of thing. We sort of do a general overview, which is great. But anyway,
democracy, Yes.
I would say democracy is where people participate for power. Basically, people participate in the decision of who is to lead the country or who is to be a part of the. I'm gonna say, can't say really the government because there's sometimes on the back, but who.
But if they choose who to lead the country, that doesn't necessarily insinuate a democratic system.
Not that. Stumbling over my words. Yes, basically an elected representative. That's what I mean. That's what I'm trying to get across. Sorry, stuttering. I'm usually not one to stutter, and crikey, I don't want to listen back to that. But yes,
I can play it back now, Oliver, if you want.
Oh,
your choice. But no, democracy. Is democracy necessarily the fairest system to get a country off its feet? To get a country going, if no one necessarily can decide what to do, we don't know what policy is best. But there's maybe our education system's not very much up and running.
There's always going to be people that have different views, isn't it? So there's always going to be. You're always going to get people that have contrasting opinions, so they're always going to say, well, to form sort of some sort of election or whatever to get a leader or get someone that's going to form a government to take things forward, you're always going to have people that have different views. So surely with that, you will be able to get things done. If everyone did have the same view, then I don't know, you'd have to form some sort of dictatorship or whatever. Yeah, interesting though. Interesting if you got a country and you know they're practically stuck, which is why we sort of see this violence sometimes and the sort of dangers that we have in democracy. I mean, we get them all the time in UK news.
Well, you get a lot more in the developing world.
Yeah,
I'd argue.
certainly.
But if you look at,
You've only got the likes of Afghanistan, haven't you? That, you know, it's quite horrendous with how, you know, they, in August this year, how things developed so quickly, with them being taken over by the Taliban again. It was dreadful, really awful circumstances. And what we see in UK terms, behind the, sort of what our media portrays to be going on, isn't necessarily what is actually going on.
No, they report fake news, and really there were no parties; there were just business meetings. But going back to democracy,
how much more can you defend that chap anyway?
Going back to democracy, there's a fascinating thing called Arrow's Theorem. I'm not sure if you've come across.
I haven't come across
Arrow's
that yet.
Theorem.
No,
but it suggests that democracy is logically incoherent. We can go read about it your own pleasure later. But if basically he states that no voting method is fair, that every ranked voting method is flawed, and the only voting method that isn't flawed is democracy. Democracy isn't necessarily so efficient. Again, going off on a tangent, away from Arrow's theorem, we see the idea maybe 49% of the country wants to do one thing, 51% do the other. Well, in a democracy, 51% because of the rule of majority, the 51% decide. Much like Brexit, and there's uproar and hoo-ha about who said what and was in lies, persuaded, etc., etc. But I think a key inconsistency remains that if we have a developing world where maybe it isn't so stable, people haven't decided what they want, they're still working out things, and they're transitioning maybe into democracy in the future, does a weak democracy at the start hinder their process? Because a weak democracy is much easier to be corrupted than maybe a strong dictatorship. What would you think?
Sorry, could you say the last point again? I misheard you.
Which would be better, as weak democracy in a developing country, which democracies generally start weak until people accept rule of law, and it can be easily corrupted, rather than a stronger dictatorship or a dictatorship which takes in power or knowledge from other people, or knowledgeable people, or powerful people across the community, to then put an interim government in place to then work towards forming a sort of quasi-democratic system and slowly build up in the same way the West seems to have developed, going from this more autocratic regime, and then slowly it chips away and becomes democratic.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could say we have a weak one. I mean, who knows? The worst thing is if there's sort of violence inflicted upon. So, you know, depending on who it was and how they were as a person.
I'm getting very confused here, Oliver. Violence.
So if the dictatorship, you know, if it's going to be ruled by someone who's, you know, going to be a threat to the people, and, you know, they are going to sort of take over, and they're going to, you know, say one thing, they do another, you know.
Sounding like a particular someone here, Oliver.
I'm not talking about a particular someone, no.
Someone maybe first name beginning with B and last name beginning with J.
I'm not naming any names, but I don't know. Difficult one, that. Weak democracy or a dictator sort of dictatorship that's going to evolve over time. Yeah, not sure.
Interesting. Oliver is playing avoid the question before avoid the question.
I'm just warming up, Archie. You know my trick. You know the tricks that I
should have turned Oliver on as you turn a television on, and leave it to wait 30 minutes before you come in, and then start the program. Maybe that's what we should do in future. Yes, we're talking about developing world. I then would like to also ask. I think we sort of quasi agreed that maybe a weak democracy isn't the best way to start a nation full of economic and social prosperity. But is there any such thing as a developed nation? If we're developing nations, we insinuate that we have such an item or a concept of a developed nation. Would you say that would it really exist?
Well, no one's really ever going to be where they want to be. They're always going to want to improve, and they're always going to want more people to sort of participate with democracy.
Who's people? Do you mean just everyone?
Everyone.
Because I disagree. I don't think we need to always. I think almost in certain ways we've gone too far. We've become fixated on needing to be perfect, needing everything to be just so, and we've become so far, I think, down the route. And democracy is its own downfall.
So should we just stop trying then?
Well, no, it's more in the case we've gone too far. We've gone beyond try. It's almost it has an equilibrium. You go up a hill and you go down a hill. And it's a bell-shaped hill, because obviously hills are bell-shaped. We all know that. It's a known fact, like the Earth is flat. Hills are bell-shaped. But anyway, you're driving up this hill, and you teeter over the top, and you can drive up, but then on the other side, you don't have brakes, so your car's no brakes. You're pushing up the hill to get to democracy. The summit of this hill is democracy. You've got to that summit, and you've got cars sitting there on the top, and that's the golden place. It's almost like the golden arc. It arcs around you, you're in heaven. It's wonderful. You're at that perfect point where we all want to aim. But the problem is, it's foggy. You don't know if that hill keeps going up or it goes down. But you know you want to keep on reaching higher, and you're already at the top. You reach that. But then you start to go down. Because it's foggy, you continue going, and then you can't stop. You continue to strive to be perfect. And I'm getting to here is basically actually freedom of speech. Because in a democracy, as we see again in the same light as a developing country or one in a dictatorship, who we may view as not developed as much, the freedom of speech doesn't really exist. We can't really choose what we say as such, or we get lambasted for what we say. And what's happening now is we've gone too far. We've aimed for democracy. We've aimed to be developed. But now we must not offend. Well, we must not do these things. We're putting in speech restrictions.
We're restricting ourselves,
So what we were restricted to in the past, maybe with religious speech, because the church had a lot of control over our country, even the king, and we had lots of more. We were restricted in what we can say. Then we learned so we could say what we wanted to say, and now we're closing it up again in a different way under a different concept. So almost in wanting to keep developing and wanting to keep on striving to be inverted commas better, inverted commas, we've almost gone over this top of this equilibrium. We've almost gone down, and we've become almost undemocratic, even though we're trying to, we say we're more democratic, and to be what almost we strive to be democratic is unrealistic. It's not achievable. It's a item that doesn't exist, just like Narnia. Sounds lovely as a concept. Love to live there, but it doesn't quite exist.
Well, interesting points raised there, Archie. Indeed. Well, it's a shame that we didn't get more responses on
Oliver, unfortunately, I think this week's... I forgot to give him coffee, you see, so he's drifting off with my monotone ramblings and convolutions.
No, I've enjoyed them. I just don't have anything further to add. You made excellent points. Yeah, with democracy, I see where you're coming from, but there's this thing from there's sort of this sense from the younger generation that there's no point really. We'll just let the government get on with it, and we'll just moan.
Yeah, indeed, we'll just moan. No, we won't moan. We'll post about it in our pastoral squares on our stories, or as I did today, someone run across the road in front of a car. Yes, that's what we must do as the younger generation, mustn't we? Yes.
Well, I mean, perhaps that pastoral squares will be we'll be voting on Instagram in the next few years.
To vote in today's general election, go to Instagram, share to your story, and tag at UK General Election 2028. And it's Pastoral Blue for Conservative, Pastoral Red for Labour, and Liberal Democrats is Invisible, and Green Party is a feminist logo, or some raging, not feminist logo, a raging Greenpeace ship or something like that. Yes.
Oh. Where do you?
How
see
many parties can I fend today? Is the question.
Well, should we move on to our current affairs?
We
Unless
should
you want to do our
Too late.
Our new segment, which
Oh yes, the new segment.
The new segment, which we've been doing for several weeks, but we'll just keep calling it a new segment because it's a new segment and it's still not new to us.
Christ, I forgot about the new segments, and I'm now playing all sorts of music, trying to actually find the right sorts of music.
It's a shame I don't have one.
No, I don't want that. This is trying to play now.
Sounds nice.
So we now go on to our new segment.
As long as you're not playing it on the airwaves, then there's no problem.
Who knows? If you're hearing us on the airwaves, don't let us know. We're enjoying it. So yes, this week we're going to look at the Manx. We're going from Manx angle this week. I think it's fun to change it around the world. We're going from a Manx angle this week, and we're going to be discussing if Oliver was an MHK. Imagine, what constituency would you like to speak from, Oliver?
I'd like to speak from. Well, we'll make a compromise between us both. So we'll go Arbrocastan and Maloo.
Oh, you're Arbrocastan and Maloo.
Since I was a former. No, I've never been. I've never lived in the constituency because I've always been Russian. Because I moved when Ballabeg was Russian, and then they changed the boundaries.
I'm sure it was Arbery. Ballabeg is Arbery, Oliver.
No, it used to be. That used to be part of Russian. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Because it used to be Castletown, Maloo, and Santon.
Interesting.
I think so, unless I've got it completely wrong. But the boundaries, and that's another thing I'm currently doing, is looking at the boundaries and all the political development of the Isle of Man, which can go across so many different levels. Sorry, that's just me inhaling myself because it's feeling quite stuffy in here at the moment. Not sure about you, Archie. Whilst I miraculously fill some time.
No, yeah, you are right. Russian was indeed in Arbery. I had no idea. I've always, for some reason, viewed Arbery as its own parish.
Yes, and then back then, Russian had 3 MHKs.
They did. Yes. Anyway, yes. Arbery Castletown, Maloo.
Yes. Hello. I am no particular person from Arbery Castletown and Maloo. I'm just a representative.
So Oliver, you stated many times in your manifestos and through other things speaking to the youth that the youth are an important part. How have you appealed to the youth? Do you think the youth are important to our democracy?
Of course the youth are important. They are part of our society and a very special part because they are the future of our democracy. And with the youth, I have much respect. They are some of the most delightful people of our society. And I have to say that throughout my campaigning, electioneering, I spent many a time on the doorstep actually speaking to the children of the homeowners.
Do you think it's condescending to refer to those 16 and over as children?
Not all were 16 and over. Some were under that age.
So why? So you're speaking to people who weren't your voter base.
Well, they were.
Who couldn't
they
vote.
were sorry, but they were friends. They were family or friends of the owner of that household. So it's important that I engage with them as to be, a member that is going to be very in the spotlight, in the community, in public. I feel it's essential that I play my part in being representative for the whole community, not just specific people in the voter base.
So Oliver, this is again just a disclaimer because I must put this disclaimer in. We are actually not referring to any HK here.
No, we're not referring to any HK. As I said, I am an unnamed.
This is totally satirical. It's satirical, just so you get to.
Yes, satirical, guys.
So why were you spotted walking away from one of the houses on the door cam, muttering "stupid child"?
Well, I don't recall those events, and I feel that any allegations that you're making are completely unacceptable, and I refute them.
So you didn't say that?
I did not. Well, until you have any evidence.
We have the video, Oliver.
I'd like to see that video because it's completely untrue. But if that did happen, then I.
Why did you mention young people only once in your manifesto?
Well, mainly because I had a lot of other priorities to fill in, which were covering such
But
things
you
as
mentioned
education. I was covering. Sorry, can you let me finish my answer? Can you let me finish my answer?
No, thank you, Oliver. So I'm very sorry, but you said that young people are one of the most important things for our democracy. So why are you saying there are more important issues, but you won't
in my manifesto of this year, of the September 22 general election, I campaigned for some of the best policies for education that the Isle of Man's ever seen. This will bring forward and invest in our children, in our future, and I am fully supportive of all our young people on
investing
the Isle of Man.
in children that leave the island.
Look, they don't
come back.
In
We have
my
a very low
manifesto,
retention
in my
rate.
manifesto, I'm looking to put in I'm looking to put in sufficient economic growth, sort of exponential economic growth, and that will we'll bring packages in, it will draw back our young people to the island, and it will boost our economy.
You talk a lot there about bringing young people back to the island. What have you done in your previous 5 years to bring young people back to the island? Is this all talk but no
Well,
action?
like I say, in terms of healthcare professionals and teachers, we've implemented or sort of put forward.
Teachers are more unhappy than ever in the education system. They are more unhappy as ever, as your recent report from your department has shown.
Look, that isn't showing the clear picture of what's going on. That was leading up to Christmas time. I think there was a miscommunication from the department. I'm not connected to the department, but there's seriously been a miscommunication. A lot of teachers seem to have thought that it was,
So you're calling those teachers misinformed?
No. I'm not undermining the professionals there.
But then surely if you're not undermining their professionals, you accept their views that...
I accept their views, but I feel as though the department at the time did not put across what they actually believe, not actually what the teachers want. That was a clear picture at that current moment in time, what the teachers felt. It wasn't how they felt over a long period of time. That was how they felt in the moment, and in the moment they were feeling very stressed, run down from the whole COVID situation which they were experiencing in schools, with so many of the staff being taken off by COVID, so many of them covering for others. It was a really hard time, but we've got through it, and we're coming out of the bright side. We're hoping to put out another of these surveys later on in the year, and with our new minister,
You just said you weren't connected to the department, so how will you be putting out the surveys?
I mean as a government,
Is it a nepotist government?
As a backbencher, I will be asking the department to. I want to know how our teachers are feeling. I'll be asking our department to go and have a look at this.
But they might just say no. After all, you only mentioned young people in your manifesto once. Do you still think that is a key failing of yourself?
Well, most importantly, I feel that our young people are the future.
If they're the future, why won't you talk about them?
I have talked about them. They're in my manifesto.
Why
under
are they
the education
Why are they
section.
our future?
I did not have a section. I completely admit I did not have a section in my manifesto regarding.
But you did have one on old people.
Yeah. Yeah, I did, because old people are.
Do they matter more?
Sorry.
Do they matter more?
Well, they vote, and that.
So you're saying they vote, so they matter more?
I'm not saying they matter more. I say they vote, and that's why I was targeting them.
Young people also vote. So
Young
why
people
won't you
vote,
target
but
them?
it's very. I've mentioned them in my education section, which is probably one of the most priority.
You've mentioned them once.
It's one of the biggest priorities.
Well, you've mentioned them. You just put your case here. You mentioned them once in your manifesto as a whole. Young people, as a term.
That's a
you
good
mentioned
thing
it
to
once.
do.
You mentioned it once. You said there are more pressing issues than young people, which I put in my manifesto. You're saying young people are very important to our future democracy. You'll put a section for old people, which again, not much necessarily in. You'll put a section for old people. And old people are mentioned throughout your manifesto, with pensions here, with a section on pensions, with a section on healthcare, with all of this. But you won't put a section in for young people.
All these issues,
Why not?
all these issues, Archie, all these issues are affecting our young people, and I'm putting in policies which will hopefully change the future of our young people. I don't need to put in a section for young people. These young people aren't necessarily bothered about reading manifestos. They just look at the person.
Are you saying that young people aren't bothered about politics?
There's not a huge amount that are, Archie. I'm going to have to admit that.
46% of young people did turn out to vote. Is that 46 not something worth carrying out? Is it a failing of you
46
to engage with young people to get them to vote?
I engage with young people on the doorstep. I engage with them. I spoke about my
Interestingly,
ideas.
you don't mention social media here, Oliver. How active
Look,
is your,
I'm
is your social media?
I'm an active user of social media. Yes.
What social media do you use?
Facebook is predominantly a good one. I'm hoping to open up a new Snapchat account soon, as well as TikTok. TikTok is one of my new favourites. I have to say, it's rather marvellous, this FYP.
Oliver, you mentioned that you're yet to set up a TikTok account. So should we really trust you as an MHK for someone who said they're yet to set up a TikTok account, but they rather enjoy it? Do you really know what you're speaking about?
Look, as an MHK, I take all social media seriously.
Which is why you're only on one.
Sorry?
Which is why you're only on one platform.
I endeavour to do what I can. I'm an active user of Facebook. I aim to be a bit more sort of prominent on the Instagram platform. Snapchat is a great platform.
Do you use it?
I'm not particularly a huge fan.
But you just said it was a great platform.
Only due to the fact that it's a lot more it's not as secure as some of the other platforms.
But you said it was a great platform.
A great platform.
I posed a question to you now, Oliver. As a final question. If we can't trust you on, say, if you contradict yourself so much that young people are important, but I won't mention them, that old people matter more than young people, but they don't matter more, that social media, I use all social media, but I only use Facebook. Oh, but no, I enjoy Snapchat and TikTok as a good platform, but I don't use them, so I don't know. Can we really trust you to be a functioning member of our government?
Look, I got a bit muddled up there. It's been a busy day for me.
Is it time for you to retire?
No, it's not time for me to
Is it
retire.
time for you to go?
At the tender young age of 55, I think it's rather reasonable that I stay in post for a number of years. Look, I use all social media platforms. I do have a preference.
You use all social media platforms, so now you're withdrawing what you said earlier.
I do withdraw such comments.
So now are we to believe that young people really are important? Are you withdrawing those too?
No, I think young people are important. I've said I've got a bit confused on my social media.
In your next manifesto, will you put a section in for young people in?
I aim to do so.
Is that a yes or no?
I will do my best, and I will hopefully do that.
You'll hopefully do that. You won't do that.
I will do that.
You will do that.
I will definitely have.
He's now committed. And if you don't do that, will you resign?
Look, I feel as though there's a great promise in our young people.
You can't make promises yourself. There's promise in our young people, but there's no promise in you, utterly. Oliver, I'm so sorry. That's your time. There's no promise in you is the final.
Look, I have to add one final.
Thank you. Now we move on to the news section where. I don't know where the music's coming from, actually. So, yes. It was just supposed to be... I tried to fade out into something jingly, but, yes, didn't work. So, that's there from Oliver Sykes. Promising young people,
Score.
But no promise in me.
Score.
Contradict yourself so many times.
Come on, I went.
It's gonna be
it
good
got worse towards the end when I just didn't have it got worse. I basically forgot what I didn't have a clue what I was talking about at the end.
The end made it the 8.5.
Oh, that's good.
The beginning part, you're too good at answering the question.
I know, I was too good.
It's being the bumbly politician.
Oh, what a great day. Head of number 10 policy unit quits. Sorry, I think that's quite big news. Just coming up on the screen as we hit 4:45. But we'll get to that in our UK section. Do you want me to cover Isle of Man if we get our little jingle on?
Fed up with Isle of Man now. After Oliver's put me off, there's apparently promising Oliver and promising young people, but one just doesn't exist. So yes, we're going to be talking about the Isle of Man news. No, not the UK news. Sorry, I totally got confused here. So yes, in the UK this week, we've been seeing the energy bill rise, and we've been seeing Dishy Rishi rolling out some support schemes. Sue Gray's report did or rather didn't come out. The Met investigation is still going on. The national insurance is still being risen. And would we prefer Starmer or a farmer? Or a llama, one of those. They all rhyme together quite nicely. And also, we've seen the Top Johnson aide quit due to parties, which is Quite interesting. And the Northern Ireland First Minister has confirmed his resignation. So yes, that's all coming up on today's programme. So, first of all, we have the energy bill rise. What do you think of that, Oliver?
It's not good news, is it? In any way, shape or form. I mean, all this talk about easing the squeeze on the cost of living, it's just got a lot harder, hasn't it? What can we do? What can we do, Archie? Energy bill experts.
Well, it's quite shocking, actually, because energy bills for the average customer on a default tariff will rise to £1,971 a year from £1,277. That's an increase of around £693 per household over a year.
Damn. Not good.
Quite hefty.
Quite hefty. I wouldn't want to pay £1,700 worth of gas bills.
Well, that's what. No, you pay 1,200 anyway. It's just the increase of £700.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to pay. I wouldn't want to pay the £600 increase.
It's
I wouldn't
quite
want to
hefty,
pay.
but Rishi Rishi, he is offering a £200 discount on all electricity bills, which will later be repaid, and £150 council tax rebate for many households. I like this council tax rebate because it does. Council tax cost an awful amount. They're rising NI as well. So yes, it's quite shocking. Do you think it's good that he's introducing some sort of support? Do you think it should be more widespread or less of it?
I think what he's doing is fairly reasonable. He is a bit. He does like to dish out these support schemes, doesn't he?
He does, yes.
Which is quite interesting, really.
I must say, and then we've seen obviously Boris's chief aide, Munira Mirza. I'm terribly sorry. It's going to be a class as a racial microaggression, probably. I can't actually pronounce her name. Marina Mirza. I struggle on some names, so I do apologise. Anyway, she's resigned. She's worked with him since his time as being London mayor. She's his head of policy. He's resigned over the PM's false claim that when Sir Keir Starmer failed to prosecute Sir Keir Starmer failed to prosecute serial sex offender Jimmy Savile when he's DPP, so Director of Public Prosecutions. What do you make of that? Of the PM's statement on that?
I thought it was totally disgraceful. I thought he shouldn't have made those comments under any circumstances, and I believe that Boris should go. Get rid of Boris.
Sorry, your eardrums have been blasted out there by Oliver.
Is it loud?
Blasted out.
Sorry.
Yes. Picked right up to infinite dB.
I'm just sick of Boris. Just go. What a buffoon.
Yeah,
A buffoon he is, Archie. And you can't deny it.
Well, as Boris has said, he has said for a very long time that whilst he might seem a baboon on the outside, people have to face the real prospect that there could just be a buffoon on the inside as well. He said that.
Perhaps, yes.
By self-admission, he said that. So, you know, he really has been honest with us since the start.
Well, at least he is honest in one aspect, but he can't be blundering over when he's having police investigations. He's completely wrong, and he knows it. I can't believe that man can lie like that anyway.
Lie, Oliver. I'm terribly sorry. I'm going to have to ask you to withdraw that word.
Or what?
Or you'll leave.
I'm representing the views of my constituents.
So, Oliver, I ask you one more time. Please withdraw.
So I'm not Ian Blackford, I have to say.
Withdrawing then? I'm left with no further option but suspend you from the podcast. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Door's there. Cheerio.
You're not joking?
No. Deadly serious here, Oliver. Deadly serious.
Okay, I've been suspended.
Yes.
What was it he could say if he said? What was
Inadvertently misled.
Well, he inadvertently is a liar.
Yeah. No, inadvertently misled, Oliver.
Sorry,
That's
misled.
apparently a difference, which is very silly. But yes, coming to our question. Because, well, we just don't like Boris, would we prefer the leader of the opposition to be Starmer, a farmer, or a llama? That's my question of the week.
I think Starmer's...
He's better than a farmer.
Well, yeah.
Or is a llama even better?
I think Starmer's all right. He's not bad. He's not the best, but he's okay. He's okay. Yeah. I mean, he's a
Interesting.
bit of a closet Tory.
Next
but
week we shall have a comparison between Oliver's comments in the past about Keir Starmer and Oliver's current comments about him. So you prefer Starmer? Interesting.
I don't prefer him.
No, then a farmer or a llama.
I prefer Starmer at the moment. Yeah.
Then a farmer or a llama. Interesting. I prefer a farmer. I think we'd have sane head in our country and return to good British values. Yes, but yes, we can move on to our Isla de Man, Spanish for you there. Very multicultural with this podcast, unlike the Isle of Man, as the census results show. But we shall come on to that when we speak about that. So yes, Oliver, I shall leave it to you now. Take it away.
Well, welcome to the Isle of Man news. The island plan has been approved yesterday in Tynwald by a big majority. A COVID briefing is about to start as we speak, which will outline the plans of the island's approach to COVID in the future. The Isle of Man Census Part 1 report has been released. As well as this, the Isle of Man COVID-19 death toll has risen to 73. The census shows that there has been a slight rise in the island's population, with 755 people living on the Isle of Man than there were in 2016. An extra £10 million is needed for the Manx healthcare due to Manx Care saying that they need more money, basically, due to overspend in staff, drugs, and not drugs as in recreational
Obviously,
drugs.
Operation Stronghold didn't go exactly to plan.
Yes, and the public are going to be having a say on annual government completely jumbled up my words. They're public to... The music's probably stopped about 5 minutes ago. Public to have annual say on government priorities. So the Manx government has been tasked with having yearly conferences in September in sort of a debate style on the policies.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't know why they agreed to that.
They want to seem as
They want to stay open,
accountable
but
and
that's like
transparent.
rule in politics. We don't give them any more opportunity to attack our policy than we can.
No.
Risky,
Can't wait for
risky,
this September,
risky.
the next September, the next September, the next September, and then it'll be election time, boys.
Yes. Right. So yes, going to Isle of Man census. Yes, it does seem we're not very multicultural, are we?
No, not really. It was quite interesting. What was I looking at? Yeah, not particularly.
But we are heavily Christian.
We are heavily Christian.
We're over 50% Christian.
You
So,
wouldn't think it. You wouldn't think it.
well, we would from our prayers, which most has been put to drop it from the Isle of Man politics, which I think is horrendous. Again, if you don't...
Horrendous?
Yes, I think it's horrendous. It's a point of tradition.
No, I have to say, no.
When we go into... Should we drop the prayer service on Tynwald Day? Should we stop even having any sort of ceremonial dress? Should the politicians turn up in T-shirts and dreams? Where would it stop, Oliver? Where would it stop?
There's tradition, but then when there's a conflict of tradition in...
Is it? How's it conflictual?
Because there's people...
We're a Christian nation, by majority, as shown.
But we don't have to choose to be Christian.
No, the MHKs don't have to join in prayer. They don't have to go to prayer. But it's an option there for if they want to, which, again, their constituents...
Well, I think it's
majority
important
are
that everyone...
Christian.
I think it's important that everyone is included and doesn't
Indeed.
feel isolated by prayers.
But the next majority, which is, again, a heavy percent, like 40%, are atheists.
We shouldn't need to have
I know,
prayers on the Christian faith.
Are atheists, so surely they just don't listen to the prayers, and that's not a problem.
The practice is outdated, Archie.
How?
Because we are becoming less of a Christian nation and they're more of a multi-faith society, and we shouldn't need to read Christian prayers, because I feel as though people should be...
should we remove all reference of God?
It should be important that everyone feels included, and regardless of their faith.
But how does it make them feel unincluded? Surely having no prayers doesn't make them feel any more included.
But it's biased, isn't it?
How? How's it biased?
Because it's Christian prayers.
They don't have to turn up.
So if everyone in that... But just because there's a majority of Christian people living on the Isle of Man, if there's not a majority of Christians as MHKs, they are more who knows? They could be of different faith.
But again, the point is, if they don't want to go to a Christian prayer, they don't have to go to Christian prayer. If there's no prayer, it's the same as them not going to a Christian prayer. So
Yeah,
we're just losing this aspect of tradition.
It doesn't need to be in a.
Should we remove the wig from the speaker?
Look, I feel as though in the next few years that will probably become.
And do you support that?
I don't see why not.
Interesting.
In these modern times, we're moving forward.
Should we just stick Tim Wood in a corporate office and put them around a board table then?
No, not necessarily. That is a different tradition.
How's it a different tradition?
Because it's not concerning faith.
But once we
Concerning-
a wig isn't concerning faith.
No.
But you'd support its removal.
Yes, it's unnecessary.
Yes. So where do we
Would
stop?
you walk round Strand Street wearing a wig?
If I was in Tim Wood, I would.
If so, next time you go in Timwood, I expect to see you in a wig.
If I'm in that position, I would.
But you're not in that position. So when you're not in that position, I expect you to see you in a wig.
No, it's only if you're if they're in that position, you accept the honour of the role, and it's out of duty to our forebearers that we follow our tradition. I think that's important for society. Otherwise, what do we do? Should I just go and just be very rude to everyone? Should I just be snug, not even say hello? Should I remove that Manx tradition of being friendly? Where do we stop?
Oh, anyway.
Where do we stop? Should I no longer start? Should I stop saying there's a boat in the morning?
If you want.
Boat in the morning, Oliver. Bye.
Adios.
Let's remove our prayers and our traditions from Timwood.
We love to have conflicts.
I'm not even religious, but I still think.
Why?
Yes, I still think.
Why do we need it?
It's tradition. It's ceremony.
But there's lots of other traditions, and this tradition is becoming outdated.
Keep them all. I say.
Keep every single tradition under the sun. We cannot live on forever.
In our parliament, I think we should. Yes, it keeps the cultural body of the island alive. It does. It's like if we were to stop the Queen's speech in the UK and no longer have the Theorem or the Gentleman's Court of Arms.
Sorry, it's tradition. No, so for example, we should not allow for people to use their tablets, their laptops in house keys.
I personally am against them using their smartphones or laptops in house keys, and generally, there's UK Parliament. There's more strict. People still use them, but using them for long periods of time. I think that's personally rude. The legislators should be listening to what their fellow legislators have to say. I think it's out of deference to their fellow colleagues that we shouldn't necessarily have this technology. We're perfectly able to have a debate and not use technology.
If there were to be a new proposal that MHKs were to, I don't know, you could turn up in joggers and a t-shirt.
I'd be against it. Absolutely awful. No, it's awful. We should have respect for the place they work in. There should be respect for the Parliament itself.
But what's the difference between
important.
one item of clothing and another? Who's not to say that someone feels smart when they wear joggers and t-shirt?
Because that person, I'm very sorry, is deluded. They have no. If you look at it, there's a sense of you have to put effort into your appearance. It's looking smart. Joggers are just the degradation of modern fashion, where they're non-forming. There's no elegance to them. There's no sort of.
But shouldn't we feel rather comfortable in the workplace rather than flustered? And
how is it flustered? I don't understand. It's showing, and again, the studies show that you feel more powerful when you wear a suit. So why would a politician not want to wear a suit or an equivalent dress?
Well, I was just playing devil's advocate there.
Yes, and I think that would be awful. I'm very much a staunch supporter of tradition. I think it's heavily important. Otherwise, we become the globalized world where no culture really exists. We just merge. I think it's important to keep our different sense of dress styles. It's important to keep our own culture, our own language. I think that makes the world the world. Otherwise, we just become very bland.
Are you a speaker of Manx?
No, but I don't. My family is not from here. So,
yeah.
Yes. But if I was, and my family was Manx and they spoke Manx, I would continue to speak Manx.
Well, there are currently another release from the census is that over 1,000 people on the Isle of Man speak Manx.
That should
great
continue.
News.
Yes. Because it is a traditional language. Again, I'm very much a supporter of tradition. I think it's a vital part of our society.
Well, you are a conservative after all.
There's conservatives who don't like tradition.
There are, but the majority do like a bit of tradition.
Even the Soviet, even those in communist nations create a tradition. They create their own tradition. You see North Korea, they have their parades. You see Russia, they have their parades. There's tradition wherever we go, and I think it's highly important. It shows respect, it shows our culture, and it shows who we are. And I think that's excellent. But, yeah, I think that concludes our podcast for this week, where we have now decided Oliver shall be suspended for another week until next week for his inadvertently misleading comments. So, yes, that finishes off this week's episode of PolitiBabble. Next week we'll be discussing, what is it now? Well, we'll be discussing, should we have a single world currency?
Oh.
And I think we might include there, should we have a single world government too? Might as well, if we discuss that episode. So if you want to listen to back episodes, you can find them on manxradio.com/PolitiBabble. That is manxradio.com/PolitiBabble. That's manxradio.com/podcast, /PolitiBabble. PolitiBabble spelled PolitiBabble. That's PolitiBabble. If you don't want to let a political debate, do let us know. We'll be more than happy to engage with you.
Indeed. You've been PolitiBabbled. Thank you. Guramaid.